Look at how big this is. Why is it so big? Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zach and today I am driving a 2019 Dodge Durango Pursuit. Up front is a 5.7 liter V8 and down below is an 8-speed automatic transmission. If you want to read more of my thoughts, head on over to carmarshal.com/overdrive where I'll be writing a complete article about the Durango Pursuit. But let's get back to that 5.7 liter Hemi V8. Well, Dodge is known for finding a great engine and then sticking it into every single chassis that they make. The 5.7 can be found in a bunch of different chassis. It's been found in a truck, Challenger, Charger, now the Durango, the Jeep, the Chrysler 300C. A bunch of different chassis have shared this same engine, and the reason for that is because it's a good engine. It keeps parts costs down by having it shared across chassis, as well as it makes good, reliable power. Now, like I said, paired to it is that 8-speed automatic transmission. Chrysler has really been pushing these high-speed transmissions, and I really can't complain too much about it. I can knock it over and shift it on the shifter, but there's no real point to that. And last thing to be noted about the drivetrain is that this is all-wheel drive. It's very rare that you actually get an all-wheel drive V8. I'm not saying that they've never existed, but it's pretty rare to get an all-wheel drive V8. This is all-wheel drive, and we'll talk about how you can select that once we talk about the interior. So, 5.7. You really feel the all-wheel drive because when you drive a big V8 in a rear-wheel drive car, you kind of get that little wiggle at the back. You don't get that wiggle here. It's dead straight. And that's really weird to hear that growl, that V8, but also it's all-wheel drive. You don't have any loss of traction at all. And it's 20 degrees right now, so traction would be an issue for rear-wheel drive cars. So in front of me, I have 3 actual physical gauges. A tachometer on the far left, a coolant temperature on the right, as well as a fuel gauge on the right. But then in the middle, I actually get a digital speedometer. Normally, I'm not too keen on these because I think some manufacturers try too hard with the digital, but this actually looks really good and it's really smooth and responsive. It's not laggy. I'll put my foot down and it smoothly moves the needle up. It doesn't jump like some other cars do. On the steering wheel, I get cruise control. I get my little selector arrows for the center screen. We can change a couple different things. We can float through some menus here. It'll give me MPGs, which no one cares about, tire pressure. You could switch it over to kilometers an hour, a bunch of different stuff. I'll cycle through it now. To the left, nothing really crazy there. I have power windows, which are auto for the 2 front passengers. The rear, you have to hold the button the whole time, like plebeians. Then there's the unlock lock button, really standard over there. To the right, I do have a decent sized screen, and this is where you're going to get your navigation. Your radio, music controls, your backup camera will appear here. Unfortunately, the Durango does not have performance pages. At least this variant does not have the performance pages, unfortunately. I always like reading that, but the nice thing about the rear view camera, which I wish our personal Mazda did this, you can just turn on the rear camera whenever you want. So you can just be cruising down the street in your 6.4 and you can look and you can see what's behind you. You don't need the rear view mirror. Down below that, you get some nice tactile buttons, a giant mute button, which is good. I like the giant buttons. You don't have to take your eyes off the road to know what you're doing. Down below those tactile buttons, you do get air conditioning controls, which this actually has 3 different climate zones. So it's for the driver can set their temperature, the passengers can set their temperature, and then you can set a temperature for the rear. Now the Pursuit advertises this as for canines. When you have canines in the back, you can keep it at a cooler temperature on a hot day so the dog doesn't get too warm. Then down below that, you have a couple interesting buttons. You have your parking sensors off button, which this car does have beepers. Really nice feature. I'm pretty sure most new cars have it, but it's always nice to have. You get your eco off button, so that's going to turn off eco mode. And then you have your sport on button, which is really, really cool. When you do turn the sport button on, it actually comes up on the dash with a little picture of a Durango, which is really, really cool. I like that little feature. It kind of amps up the energy a little bit. And then you have your traction control off button. Then down below all of that, you get a cigarette lighter, 12 volt, 2 USB chargers or to plug into the radio, and then you get an aux cord. Then you have the shifter, which actually I personally really like. It feels really nice, and it's not the rotary dial shifter. Some Chrysler products from this era and earlier have the rotary shifter, and I love rotary engines. I hate rotary shifters, so I'm glad that the Durango does not have it. You have 2 pretty sizable cup holders, and then all the way down at the bottom, that is where you actually shift from either all-wheel drive or into low range. So if for some reason you're doing some mudding or you're driving through some deep snow, you want to keep it into a low-range gearbox, you can tap it into low range. You can't actually make the car 2-wheel drive. At least you get a couple options when it comes to the all-wheel drive. So the Durango is normally a 3-row SUV. If you were to buy a civilian model, you would get 3 rows, but because this is the Pursuit edition, it actually has only 2 rows because you need room to put all of the equipment, plus you're never gonna carry 3 rows of convicts. All right, so we are in the back of the Durango Pursuit, and a couple things to note back here. I do get my own personal vents. Like we said, up front there is the tri-zone climate control, so that's where that is controlled, as well as I can actually control it a little bit myself. I can kind of decide where the air goes and stuff like that. I do have vents above my head as well. Again, that tri-zone climate. I got 2 little lights here, which I'm using because the sun has ran away from me. I do have little coat hangers, but other than that, pretty basic back seats. They're pretty comfortable. They're not bad. Most departments will probably switch out these back seats, but if you do get a similar Durango, they're not going to be horrible back seats. Do have a center console, 2 cup holders, pretty nice. But other than that, nothing too crazy back here. So a couple things that come on the Pursuit edition, because this is the police variant of the Dodge Durango, is you get actually different suspension. So it actually has auto leveling suspension. So if you put a bunch of equipment in the back, it will automatically level out the Durango, which is super nice. You're not going to blow out your struts by carrying around any equipment. Another police variant thing is the red dome light, which is really cool. That only comes in the Pursuit edition, and that actually does come from the factory. It has factory tinted fog lights, a bigger alternator to run all of the equipment, as well as a larger battery with better cold cranking amps, so it's really going to last. This is a more durably built Durango because it has to be a fleet vehicle. It has to be able to start every single morning, and it has to be able to run hundreds of pounds of equipment, you know, radios, radars, lights, all of this stuff. It has to be able to do all that, and the Durango does in fact do that. So unfortunately, this Pursuit Durango is not actually on sale to the public, but you can get a similar version. There are 2019 Durangos for sale, of course. So one last thing I want to talk about with the 2019 Durango, this isn't only the Pursuit edition, but I really like the look of this. I did review a 2013 Durango a little while ago, and I like the look of this one better. Now granted, they have had 6 years to change it, and the body hasn't changed that much, but there are a couple things that I like. Mainly the front end. I think the front end looks really aggressive, and I like that. The grille is a higher trim level grille, so if you get a base model Durango, you're not going to get that grille. But if you spec it up a little bit to the GT or above, you will get that grille, and I think it's worth it. The headlights are a lot better, and speaking of lights, you have the racing stripe taillights. So I'll show it here. I think the taillights look awesome. I don't like how Cadillac Escalades go all the way up, but I like that Dodge Durangos go all the way across. Now, the last thing I'm going to say about the Durango, and we'll finish out this video, is that I have had a couple years to grow since the last Durango video. And I talked about how in that video, the Durango kind of focuses on this anger, this sort of deep down need for aggression and stuff, because it has all these pointed lines, and the gauges are red, and it kind of has this aggression about it. And when I reviewed the old Durango, I said basically that. But now, as the intellectual in which I am, there's this theory about the id, ego, and the super ego. So your ego is who you are, the decisions that you make. Your super ego is who you aspire to be, kind of the decisions you would want to make, the better version of yourself. The super ego wants to give to charity. The super ego wants to help someone with a flat tire. But the id are the deep, dark desires that you have, these dark sort of almost fantasies that you have. The Dodge Durango appeals to the id in everyone, that dark fantasy of aggression. If there were no laws, everyone would drive Dodge products. It sort of festers that sort of aggression that's in all of us that we keep behind closed doors. And when you're driving this, you actually sort of get to express those aggressions. You get to sort of live them out. You put your foot down and the V8 just goes. I mean, it doesn't care about any law. It just goes and it growls and it snarls. This thing with an exhaust would sound the most rowdy of any SUV you can buy today. And I think that's the coolest part of the Durango, is it makes you feel cool. It lets you harness that deep down aggression. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you guys learned something about the 2019 Dodge Durango Pursuit. If you'd like to read more of my thoughts, head on over to carmarshal.com/overdrive. But again, hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.
There goes a sight from my soul.